I've been completely AFKing Simulacrum on a second character as part of a build so I can make a ton of money by getting some of the best bases possible alongside exceptional uniques at the highest item level, which is a kind of addition to one of the recent videos that I did, which was on farming exceptional bases using maps. This one is going to guarantee you the best item level possible with no real input cost. You make your money back from doing the simulacrums themselves pretty much from every single run. You have a good chance of getting currency drops, which are also going to make you money at the exact same time. And there's some really great input. There's just a few things that we need to do in order to be able to do this. You don't have to do it AFK. That's just what I've been doing on my second screen in order to make some extra money on this account versus on the main account. And it's a way that, you know, you can do it too if you have another key from a supporter pack or something like that, and you can have both games running at the same time using like an Epic Games launcher versus the Steam launcher or something like that. Depends whichever way you want to go. But in terms of how I've been running what we're doing, of course we are going with negative rarity. The main thing with rarity is getting it just as low as possible. Now on the character I'm running, without completely bricking the build and making it unusable to actually do AFK, I'm not able to get as high of a negative rarity as I am on my main account, which would be around about 40%. If we were running a fully active build, we'd be able to get this number as low as like 70%, something like that, maybe even more. And that would be down to using Venter's Gamble rings, which give you reduced rarity on them because obviously they can roll increased and reduced on the rarity on those rings, as well as, you know, getting yourself decent reses from the rings themselves. So these are just ones I bought for relatively cheap, about 50 exalt, something like that. Obviously you can min-max these as much as possible. For my build I do need some life from them, so just getting as much life as we possibly can, whilst also providing enough reses to cap our reses in all aspects, including chaos res, which is why we've got a amethyst ring in here and why we're not using an ingenuity. If you're running on a main account, I'd be swapping out a belt for ingenuity, making sure you've got all of your reses, and then having two Venter's Gambles with the maximum possible reduced rarity and the minimal amount of increased rarity on the implicit, because obviously that can go to 6% as an implicit versus, you know, you can go as high as 15. Obviously you want the best combination, which would be minus 25% reduced rarity, or 25% reduced rarity, and then 6% increased rarity of items found as well on the implicit, which would give you about 19% reduced rarity on each of the rings, which would then be buffed by ingenuity, which can go as high as like 36%, maybe even more on the over corruption, if that makes sense. And so you could get that on both rings and then have them in the two main slots. And then on this character, obviously we're running the ability to have 3 rings, and so we're able to use 3 rings. So we could, you know, swap out one of these for another one, but as soon as I do that, it ruins my actual resistances. And whilst I could swap this out and change it for just one that gives me reses without having increased rarity on it, I don't want to do that just for the sake of, you know, I can't be bothered. But obviously reduce rarity, get that on your gear, and then obviously just get yourself a build that is capable of doing Simulacrum. And then all you need is the Simulacrum splinters. They are quite expensive at the moment, costing about 1.8 exalt for every splinter. So they are very expensive compared to what they used to be. And the rewards that you actually get from them aren't as great in terms of the despairs and stuff like that, because of the fact that the splinters have gone way higher in price, but the actual rewards that you get, so isolations, fear, suffering, despair, all of this sort of stuff, the actual emotion, the liquid emotions have all gone down in price, including paranoia down at about 4 exalt, which is where the majority of your money that you get your money back from comes from there. But even with that, we've been able to make multiple divines. You know, we're up at 16 divs, and I've only really done this for like 1 day and not very actively, you know, missing minutes, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes between each of the waves sometimes because I'm not focused on it or whatever, because you still have to move even when you're AFK to get to the next zone, of which I'm not like super active on doing. So it's just really to have there as we go. And when I got time, I swap over and just move it into position. But we've still been able to farm up a ton of currency. You still get divine drops from the actual place. But how do we actually get all of the gear? What do we do? Well, essentially, we've been selling items that we've been able to get from the place itself. So, you know, getting our wands that are item level 82, which drops in Simulacrum at the 3rd level. You have to do Simulacrum at level 3 for this specific method. And whilst we're talking about it, we might as well just jump in and I'll give you some tips as to what we're kind of looking for when we go through and do Simulacrum in general, when we're actually running it, what we're actually searching for in terms of profit, what can make us the money, because it isn't necessarily just the currency drops that you actually get when you're doing Simulacrum. It's actually all of the extra bits that come alongside it. So obviously I can just sit here and not do anything, and we just let the mobs attack us. But the main thing is just making sure that you check all of the magic bases. Because of the fact that we're getting reduced rarity, we're going to have increased drops of those magic items rather than rares. Because when you're running Simulacrum, I tested it out because I was like, I wonder if it's because it's like a boss encounter type thing, you know, one of the pinnacle bosses, I guess, of Path of Exile 2, that it would maybe have some sort of alteration where like all of the drops are just standardized, they're not affected by rarity. They are in fact affected by rarity, so having rarity on your build is definitely going to help you out in Simulacrum. And so essentially we're just like going to use as low rarity as possible. It's going to give us more normal bases, as well as actually getting ourselves the magic bases. So both of those are really good because of the fact when you're running in tier 82, a lot of those magic bases, if you get tiered magic bases, so you know, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, they're going to drop with really good mods on them. And even if they drop as a white item, because of the fact that we can then grab them up. So for example, let's have a look. We can grab up these Sandsworn sandals and we can have a quick check of the mods on those. Let me go back to the actual hideout, and then we can check what we're actually getting, what we're looking for. Because whilst these might not be perfect, because you know they're whatever, we pick them up off of the floor, obviously they're magic bases. So a lot of the time when you're looking at rares, you can't actually like craft onto them. So whatever are a tiered rare, like tier 5 rares, we're often seeing them, we're picking them up, we're checking them, and they've got absolutely diabolical mods, you know, 35% reduced attributes. Whereas when we pick up a magic base, obviously if we're just going through the crafting process by using perfect transmute, perfect augment, we're just going through and then we're adding a greater regal, you've got a ceiling to whereabouts the item can go on like a rare base, versus when you're using this sort of method, you're going to be able to craft up items that are good on across the board. So you know, going from a perfect transmute, perfect augment, then a greater regal because it's just cheaper. Sometimes it's worth perfect regaling them if you get 2 really good mods on the normal base that you've augmented and transmuted, and then of course using greater exalts, using your abyss modifiers, and then you know, being able to craft some of the best get item in the game. And that's how I've been able to make a ton of currency, just transferring the items over to the main account, going through, selling them on the stash tabs. I don't really have a huge merchant tab because I'm not going to buy another merchant tab on here. I've just got a couple of things that we've kind of got lying around and that sort of thing that I've just chucked up on the trade. But yeah, that is basically what we're after, is just finding bases. I mean, this is an armor evasion piece that we've just got. It has T1 life, I'm pretty sure. No, it's T2. So and then T1 attack speed, T1 crit damage bonus. Maybe someone will buy this. It's probably way overpriced for an armor evasion base, but maybe it'll be worth like 10 div, something like that. So these are just items that I've just grabbed and couldn't be asked to trade them over. But when you do actually start farming this and doing it properly, you're constantly seeing stuff that we're getting. So whilst this has a terrible starter mod, even things like this, like the Sandsworn sandals, like it's not a great base. It's not the best base that you can get. But for me, it's just worth chucking on another one. So we got a lightning res. At this point, maybe, you know, at some point, maybe you can get rid of that energy shield. Like even if it's one bad mod, like it's not necessarily worth it. That's where I would use a greater regal or an essence. And then we see, oh, okay, it got increased energy shield recharge rate. Let's just bin it and then waste no more time. And it's just basically speed going through all of these like magic bases that we're getting, checking like if maybe they get good mods. If they've only got one mod on them as a magic base, it's worth just using a perfect transmute or an augment in order to make it into a 2 mod blue item, and maybe you get a really good mod like a high roll T1. And then you can go forward from there, crafting however you want. And obviously if you're well versed in crafting, you can turn some of those bases into some really good stuff. And I've been able to do it multiple times where we're crafting like 10 div, 15 div. It's often like that mid-range where people need items that are good, like they've got all of the decent modifiers, which is not rare to be able to get when you're running such so much quantity. Because as we start going through all of the different waves of Simulacrum, you actually find that the quantity of items that drop every single time, if you've ever done Simulacrum, you'll know that all of the items start to increase in quantity, so there's lots more. And so by wave like 10 that we're doing of Simulacrum, we're getting, I don't know, like 15 different bases as we go. And so we're checking all of them, just checking to see if there's any T1s on there on the magic bases, and just keep on going, picking up all of the liquid emotions, making sure that we pick them all up. Obviously you can get some of the more expensive ones that basically pay for the entire run if you get a suffering, I think it is, or an isolation, I can't quite remember. And then obviously you're getting paranoias that come alongside as well, which are worth a lot, and they drop quite frequently, especially once you get past like wave 5. That's where they start really just churning out the decent amount of them, and when the bosses actually start to appear. And so we basically are searching around for those. I'll join you back in a second once this wave is done, and then we can have a look at the bases, see if there's anything interesting, and I'll just continue on through this until we kind of basically complete each one of these, and I'll show you the sorts of things that you can get towards the end. So there we go, we got just a normal guardian bow as just a standard normal item. A cap, I mean, it's not a good base, so we won't even bother checking that, and it's not tiered. But obviously this is what we want, just a clean normal item that we can then craft upon later on down the line. And obviously the more negative rarity you have, the less like rare drops that we're going to get, because essentially we don't really want any rare drops. So I'm not running in the optimal setup because of the fact we do have rarity on the build basically in this ring. So getting that off will basically guarantee almost every single item is going to be a magic or a normal item, and the more normals that we get, that is where the money is. So if you can get your rarity as low as possible into the negatives, so negative rarity, that is where we really make the money. Like genuinely, that is where you're going to make tons and tons of money. Just farming up those normals into decent items. Even if you fail on it and you get a couple, you can recombine them into really good items, and then you only have to do a couple of things with the crafting on them, and then you can put them into a saleable state and we can get rid of them. That's basically what we're after, is just basically farming those and getting as much money from that as possible. So with that done, obviously rings are one of the biggest profit margins on stuff. So if we're getting magic rings, they are like the god tier stuff, because the thing with rings is they're really easy to craft into super good items, and I'll actually do a video on ring crafting to get yourself some really good rarity rings if you're after it for mapping, if you want the highest rarity and stuff like that. They're really easy to craft on, and to get yourself good rings, like just guaranteed good rings, especially if you play on a blood mage, for example. And so yeah, we should be able to farm up a lot of those base rings that I can then use myself to then craft and then make a ton of money from those rings without having to buy bases. Just basically saves me a lot of time going on trade market and buying things, having an ult that is farming all of the bases for me. And obviously, you have to be a bit flexible with how you're crafting and what you're crafting. But at the end of the day, as long as you have like an influx of quite a lot of items, which Simulacrum just does, it has really good mob density. You can clear it in about 15 minutes if you've got like a good build and you're just running through actively. Obviously when I'm AFKing it, it's probably a little bit over, like, I don't know, 25 minutes or something, depending on how active you are. I mean, you can basically make it the same speed as fully active if I wanted to, and I could transition this build into the active one using barrier invocation, but I just don't want to play actively. And there we go, an iron ring. Not the best base, in fact, probably the worst base. But, you know, that's the idea, is we're getting all of those bases as easily as possible. And we just do have to do a little bit of rearranging here. And then we pick up the normal quarterstaff, and then we move on to the next zone. It's just as simple as that. Next one, we got a Fear, which should definitely not be a div noise. It's not worth that much. Great Regals, that sort of thing. So at this point, we'll just go back to the hideout and drop off some of these items. Make sure to keep some of these just so you guys can keep track of what we actually got. And then we'll do like a mass crafting of all of those as we go. The only problem I have is just keeping space in the stash, because we do not have that much stash space. So that's always fun. Next one down, we got an Attuned 1 tier 5. Attuned 1's obviously tier 81 can roll with +5 to level of skills. So that is what we're kind of after. And then obviously making sure you check your loot filter as well, because sometimes the normal bases can go in there. So even a bad base can sometimes sell as long as you get like good mods. So sometimes it's worth even using the bad bases just to see if you get good mods on them, as they can still be better than like a good base with like mediocre rolls, etc. And sometimes you can sell them as long as you're price checking against the like everything in that category. You know, you can still make money. People will still buy it unless it's like an implicit modifier of whatever the item is that you've got. And there we go, another 2 down. We didn't really get anything in the last one, but we did get a couple in this one, which was not bad. And then checking on the floor again, a jungle tiara, but ES helmets don't typically sell anyway, even if they do have like triple T1 on the prefixes and good mods. Like, it's very difficult to get sellable ones, as a lot of people are using unique helmets anyway this league. So yeah, we're pretty much searching for energy shield bases for pretty much everything, like vial robes and stuff like that. So even like the normal vial robes are worth like 180 div unidentified at item level 82. So you can often sell just the normal bases for enough to basically break even. So even if you get like a decent base, things like that, even like spears and stuff like that as a normal base at item level 82 can sell. So it's always worth price checking all of the normal bases before you craft upon them, unless you're specifically wanting to craft something yourself and you get the base that you want. So always check the item prices before, and then, you know, make a decision whether you want to guarantee your money back, as they often do sell a lot quicker when they're a normal base. It's just obviously then you can lose money if you do decide to craft on it and you lose the crafting, you know, you get unlucky or whatever. But, you know, definitely guaranteed profit just from selling the normal bases themselves, and you can make a lot of money doing that. I just prefer to craft on them, as I prefer the big payoffs, you know, where you get like 20 div, 30 div in one go, as opposed to like 20 lots of, you know, 300 div, 300 exalts, etc. But another one down, Sacramental Robe, which is alright. That's an ES base that's actually not too bad. And then we've obviously got a load more stuff to drop into the stash. So let's do that. Hopefully we've got enough space to finish this run. Usually I'm trading over items constantly. So yeah, I should really buy a quad tab. That would definitely solve a lot of the issues with space that I have. But either way, yeah, that's basically what we're after. Once again, another bow, which is always nice. Those typically do sell. And then Visceral Quiver, obviously a decent base. So we'll just identify that, and then if it's bad, we can get rid of it. But from here, once again, continue on. Next one down, as you can see, just the amount of loot is just stacking up as you go through the Simulacrum itself. Obviously not so many of the normal bases when we're running with the rarity that I've got. So if I'm running on something like my main account with -40, -50, you do generally get better stuff in terms of the normal bases, and a lot less of the rares that we're getting here. But even the rares, as long as they're tiered like tier 3, they are item level 82, so they can have like the best mods on them as well. So they're just like having, you know, a +1 to monster level with a T16 map and running around, so they can have some really good stuff on them. It's just the likelihood is much less, and then we are once again running out of space, so we're basically picking up any of the ES base magic stuff. And then if we have space, we'll pick up spears and stuff like that. So obviously we could pick up all of this sort of stuff if we had more space on the main account or whatever. And I wasn't doing a video, I would identify all of these individually and then go through. But for the sake of the video and for speed and so you guys can see, I'll just keep it condensed as possible. And there we go, final one down. We did not get a huge amount of stuff from the final one. And of course we didn't get the Megalomaniac Diamond, which can make you a ton of money. Obviously, you can make anywhere from like 10 exalt all the way up to hundreds of divs if you get the correct Megalomaniac. But that is just RNG. And over time, eventually you'll start getting good diamonds. You know, you can sell them for 20 div, 10 div, etc. But as long as you do it for a decent period of time, you'll get the diamonds. And it's probably about a 1 in 5 or something like that to get the diamond. So, you know, it's just doing enough of them, and those will also pay for your run. You can't sell them unidentified. They just come as they are because they're already corrupted. So that's not too much of a help with regards to, you know, guaranteeing you money. But obviously they can still be good. So that's kind of what we're after. It's just any of those diamonds will be nice to have. And I guess now we can just pick up the final couple of bits and then we'll make our way over to check out all of these items. So we have picked up all of the items and now we can go through and check them all. So starting off the bat, we get a sacramental robe that's pretty garbage. It doesn't have a res, and it has, although it has T1 hybrid, energy shield and max life, it has spirit, it has a crappy roll of just standard life, like min rolled life. So that can either be recombinated. If I had space, I would do that. But we'll just get rid of it. Then we get some polished braces, which actually have T1 increased evasion and T1 chaos res. Now you can sell it as it currently stands for someone who's maybe trying to craft. And we could have a look at what that is if we type in 82 item level. That price is currently, there's one on the market for 1 divine. It's unlikely that it would sell for that. So it's more likely that it would probably be in the region of about 200 exalt or something like that for this base, as it is T1 chaos res, probably one of the most sought after reses. And then you can essence craft on this sort of stuff as well. So we will probably just list that one up for maybe, let's put 300 exalt, and that may sell to someone. As you can, it's definitely a decent crafting base. Then we got a T1 evasion on the helmet. So if we wanted to craft this, helmets once again is like a less so of a decent thing to craft on. But as you can see, we hit double T1 because we're using what is in effect like a perfect exalt, except this is much cheaper. It's like 1.8 exalt per one or something like that. So it's really cheap. And so, yeah, we hit 2 T1s on this. Maybe this would sell as well, so we could just sell this as is. I can check the price of a base like this. It's probably not worth anything because it is a evasion helmet and not that many people are after evasion. So that would be like 20 exalt or something like that. So I'd probably just get rid of it because I'm not too fussed on that. Or we'd continue to craft it and maybe make something good. But for me, I'm not that fussed. Then we got, you know, Visceral Quiver. It has T1 crit damage bonus, which maybe someone would be after. I have no idea. It does have really crappy roll of fizz damage. So looks like they're going for about 100 exalt as it currently stands. So we could sell it for maybe 50 since it does have a crappy roll of fizz damage on it. And maybe someone would like annul it off if there is a way to fully craft the crit quiver. And then of course we have Sekima sandals, so like we can just get rid of those. Those don't have 35% movement speed, which is what we're after. And then we got a belt. Now belts do actually sell, and because we're using decent things on them, we can get some pretty decent rolls on all of the mods on these. So obviously you're looking for reses, for strength, or int or any of the stats, and then obviously max life, max mana, armor, whatever you fancy. And then obviously some people do actually search for increased charm effect duration alongside charm charges. Now fine belts are not the best base because it is flash charges per second, and that's generally not as useful, and so we can just sell that one off and get rid of it. And then obviously we got a load of currency drops, so a couple of exalts, a load of guilt, all of this sort of stuff does actually sell. 7 paranoias, I mean that's 20 exalt just in the paranoias right there, 20 something exalt. A fear which sells for, I don't know, like 10 or something like that. So you're probably making about 60 exalt from all of this, just random various loot. We paid about 200 and something for the run, so whilst you're not making money necessarily straight away, the bases that we get are also where you're making your money back from. So this is generally with not the best setup either, so we're not running minus negative rarity. The normal bases is where the money's at, like getting the normal bases. So if we look at Sacramental Robe that's normal that we picked up, yeah, not worth too much, like 5 exalt or something. And then we got an energy shield chest piece, which has T1, T3, but then it's got crappy rolls on the suffixes, so that can actually go, or we could use it to recombinate. This would be like perfect recombination fodder. So we'd chuck this one in with another piece that does actually have better rolls. So just as an example, let's try and get one that's Thorns damage, not ideal. And then we get, that's pretty crappy as well. And then of course we've just, either way, we could recombinate the increased energy shield with another base and go for flat energy shield. And then we Abyss Desecrate the prefix, which gives us then an option of getting Spirit at T1, max life at T1, or getting, you know, something else. And that would be like a giga item, and it also gives you much more chance of getting it. The recombination chance of energy shield chest pieces is also very, very high. It's like 20%. So it is definitely worth recombinating these. Whilst you can't essence craft on them, you can have a very good chance at getting the reses on them as well. And then we got a load of wands and stuff like that. So some of these I picked up on my previous runs, like there we got T1 lightning damage, which is also worth a decent chunk. And then some extra stuff as well. So let's grab out some of these extra bits and see whether or not we got lucky with any of these. So decent start to the evasion chest piece. That one has T2 damage with bow skills, probably not worth anything. T1 max life on this mail belt, but we would have to roll 2 reses basically to make this valuable to people, as it is a mail belt, so not the best, but it's not awful. And then we got T2, T2 on some boots. So that is a pair which I would probably use a Greater Regal and hope that we get a T1 that's very good for the build, like for example movement speed. So we'd go in and use a Regal, or you could Essence to get a T3 res on the suffix, but if you don't really get it, then it's not ideal. Got Deflection, which is actually okay for evasion boots, but we will 100% need another res if we do actually end up getting you know, movement speed on these. And then that is basically that one. We can hit this one with 1, so it got T2 life, which would be fine if we got 2 T1s afterwards. And because we've got so many different pairs of stuff like this, you're basically just searching for the T1 on the magic base, and then that's where you can then further craft. So anything that's okay, I'll just drop back in. And another belt. We got obviously the Guardian Bow, which may not be worth that much as a normal base. But yeah, we could we pretty much use this for recombination again. So if we go in and use one, we got T1 fizz damage. So there you go. We can recombinate that with something else. And, you know, this is where I would hit it with then a perfect augment. And then maybe we get a good suffix. And then at that point I go, actually, maybe this bow could be decent, even if it isn't the best base to begin with. Maybe someone does use chain, and so it could be like the best bow that they can use if you do craft it into a god tier bow. And so that's basically what we're after. Lots more stuff in here. We can actually check this one that was tier 5. If it hits, The lightning spell skills, that's perfect. It did not, which definitely sucks. Because lightning spell skill ones, if they do drop with +5, are very expensive. And then if you get the extra damage as extra, alongside that, it's worth like 6 div or something like that as a base. So yeah, very expensive. And yeah, that's basically that. So we could use this for recombination, but ideally you need a +5 on them to begin with. Otherwise they're not worth anything. And then we got a res on this plate belt, so would be worth checking if we get another couple of reses with that one. And then just a spike spear, which I'm sure is not worth anything as a normal, yeah, like 5 exalt. So if you're just mass listing all of this stuff for like 5 exalt, you've got a quarterstaff that's normal as well. This would be worth 5 exalt. Another guardian bow, like 5 exalt. So we could use a perfect on this one again and see what we get. So got mana per enemy killed, so pretty trash. But the augment will give us a prefix, so maybe we get a good prefix like percentage increase max percentage increase fizz damage, and so that would maybe then be recombinated with the other one. And then yeah, we got some normal bases for some belts alongside a withered wand as well. And then yeah, a great hammer and stuff like this, which we can check, and some shoes, which maybe we get 35% movement speed on. But this is basically the method. It's really simple, really easy. It doesn't take a lot of money. It's a very low startup cost to actually get involved with. And yeah, hopefully that gives you an indication of how to get the best bases for the game, especially if you're a hardcore account and you don't have access to trade and you're specifically playing solo self-found or something like that. Then it's a good way of making some money, or at least not making money, but getting good bases to then craft upon. So yeah, that is kind of probably the best way of getting tier 82 bases in the game, at least at the moment, without having to like mega juice your maps and spend so much currency just getting there and then juicing and then only having it one time. It's just consistently, every time you go in, it's always 82 bases that are magic, and you know, sometimes rare and a lot of the time normal if you're in the negative rarity, like I highly recommend. But that's the scuffed run with not negative rarity really, -1%, and you can imagine what it's like as soon as you get up into -40, -50. Maybe I'll throw up some footage of that I do have previously of what we get when we are running actively on my main account. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed and found it useful. And yeah, definitely get on this if you are after crafting bases and simply just trying to farm and get lucky with exceptional bases as well. Because remember, all of the exceptional bases will be the highest item level, which makes them expensive. They can be 10 div, 15 div. I sold a crossbow for I think 18 div yesterday, and then I sold a pair of boots for like 30 div that I got exceptional. So yeah, they're very, very expensive if you get the right base with the right sockets on it, etc., and not quality. So thank you very much, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.